For almost 2,000 years, one story has been set in stone. One man's name has become the very definition of betrayal. But what if that entire story was a lie? What if the most important piece of evidence, a secret testimony, was deliberately buried and left to rot for 17 centuries? Tonight, we're not just telling a story, we're opening a cold case.
This single question is at the very heart of our investigation, and it's a question so explosive it could shake the foundations of one of the world's most influential stories. So I want you to forget everything you think you know about Judas Iscariot, because the story we're about to piece together is far, far stranger than you can imagine.
Okay, so before we dig into the new evidence, we have to revisit the original crime scene, the official story, the one we've all been told. And you know, on the surface, the case against Judas Iscariot, it seems pretty much open and shut.
I mean, think about it. He was one of the 12, an insider who committed the ultimate act of treason. That kiss in the garden, the 30 pieces of silver. It's the blueprint for every story of betrayal we've ever heard. It's a tale so powerful, it's literally part of our language. But you know, every good detective knows, the most convincing stories often hide the deepest secrets.
And right here, this is where our real investigation kicks off. What if the accused never even got to tell his side of the story? What if his version of events, a gospel written in his own name, was hunted down, branded as dangerous heresy, and then just vanished from the earth, assumed to be lost forever? Well, until now.
The journey of this lost testimony, wow, it's a thriller all on its own. It's a story about a chance discovery, some criminal-level neglect, and a frantic last-minute race to save a priceless piece of history from literally turning into dust. This isn't just some old document, it's a survivor. The amount of time we're talking about here is it's staggering. It was written way back in the 2nd century, and almost immediately, a famous early church father named Irenaeus slammed it as fictitious history. And then, nothing. For 1,700 years, it was just a ghost, a footnote in some ancient heresy hunter's book. So its rediscovery in a cave in Egypt back in 1978, well, that should have been this amazing moment. Instead, it was just the start of a whole new tragedy.
You know, the human drama behind this artifact is just as wild as what's written on it. This ancient text, this key piece of evidence, wasn't treated with care. It was abused, passed around the shady world of the antiquities black market. Just try to picture it. A 1,700-year-old document so delicate you could breathe on it and it might fall apart, gets locked away in a bank's safe deposit box in New York for 16 years. The humidity just ate it alive, turning the pages into something that looked like wet coffee grounds. At one point, an owner, thinking he was preserving it, actually stored it in a freezer, which shattered its delicate structure. By the time the experts finally got it, it was a jigsaw puzzle of over 1,000 tiny fragments. A story that survived centuries was almost destroyed in just a few decades by pure greed and ignorance.
So, now that we've finally recovered the evidence, we have to figure out the motive. And to do that, we can't look at this with our modern eyes. No, we have to crack a code. We have to get inside the heads of the people who wrote it. A really mysterious and, well, radical group of early Christians known as the Gnostics.
The whole thing revolves around this one idea, gnosis. It's a Greek word that means knowledge. For the Gnostics, you weren't saved by faith alone. You were saved by getting secret, divine knowledge that would awaken a spark of God that was trapped inside of you. And trapped is the key word here, because they believed that our world, you know, the physical universe, it wasn't some beautiful divine creation. They thought it was a cosmic prison.
This view is it's a complete 180 from traditional Christianity. Where most Christians saw a world made by a good and loving God, the Gnostics saw a jail built by a lower-level, arrogant god they called Saklos, which basically means the fool. And our bodies? They weren't temples, they were flesh and bone cages for our divine spirit. This wasn't just a slightly different opinion, it was a total flip of reality.
And that brings us to the last piece of the code we need, how they saw Jesus himself. It's a concept called docetism. They believed the real Christ was a being of pure spirit. The man everyone knew as Jesus of Nazareth, that was just a physical shell, kind of a disguise he was wearing. So think about it. If the body is a prison and Jesus is really a pure spirit, what's the greatest possible favor you could do for him? It wouldn't be to protect his body, it would be to help him escape it.
All right, now that we have the code, we can finally open the document and read the testimony from the accused himself. And I'm telling you, what it says is nothing short of a theological bombshell. The Gospel of Judas starts with a scene that just flips the whole script. Jesus is watching his disciples pray, and he just bursts out laughing. He's mocking them because they're praying to the wrong God, to the fool who created this prison world. He thinks they're all blind, they're ignorant, all of them, except for one.
This is a total reversal of everything we know. The man who was cast as the ultimate villain is now being shown as the chosen one. Jesus pulls Judas aside, away from the other clueless disciples, to share the highest secrets, the true gnosis. In this version, Judas is the only one who's smart enough, who's spiritual enough to get what Jesus' real mission is all about.
And there it is, the confession, the motive for the so-called crime. Jesus doesn't just predict the betrayal, he orders it. You will sacrifice the human being that bears me. In the Gnostic world, this is the ultimate act of friendship, of pure loyalty. Judas isn't handing Jesus over to be killed, he is setting his friend free. He's liberating his master's divine spirit from its fleshly prison. The betrayal wasn't a crime, it was a sacred mission.
It's a shocking story, right? A complete rewrite of the official narrative. But now, as investigators, we have to ask that final, crucial question. Is any of it true? What's the verdict from modern scholars who spent years picking this text apart?
So here's the verdict from modern scholarship. The document is absolutely real. It's an authentic Coptic manuscript from around 300 AD, which itself is a copy of a much older Greek text. And it's almost certainly the exact same fictitious history that Bishop Irenaeus was so angry about. But, and this is the big one, not a single credible historian believes it contains any real, factual information about the historical Jesus or Judas. It was written over 100 years after they died to push a very specific Gnostic agenda.
So if it's not historically true, why is it so important? Because it's proof that early Christianity wasn't this single unified thing. It was a war of ideas. There were dozens of different gospels floating around, dozens of different ways people tried to understand Jesus. This text is like a ghost from that battle, a voice from the losing side, reminding us that the story we all know wasn't the only story that was being told.
Think about it. The ideas in the Gospel of Judas were hunted down, they were condemned, and they were literally buried in the Egyptian desert. At the same time, 4 other Gospels were saved, made official, and used to build an institution that would shape the next 2,000 years of history. And all of that brings us to one last, really big question that just hangs over this whole investigation.
Seriously, was it? We call this text a heresy because the group that hated it ended up winning the argument. But the fact that it even exists, that it survived against all odds, it forces you to wonder. What other stories, what other points of view were stamped out in order to create the one true version of history?
You know, the discovery of the Gospel of Judas proves that secrets can stay hidden for thousands of years, just waiting for the right moment to come back to light. And it really makes you wonder, what else is out there, locked away in dusty vaults or still buried under forgotten sands? Some people believe the most tantalizing secrets aren't buried in sand at all, but are filed away in the most secure archive on Earth, the Vatican. But that, well, that's probably a story for another day.
And with that, our investigation for today comes to a close. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into a 1,700-year-old mystery. It's a story that really proves the past is never quite settled, and that the best questions are often the ones that don't have easy answers.
It's really your curiosity, your willingness to look beyond the official story and to ask the hard questions that gives these lost voices a chance to finally be heard again. These aren't just old documents, they're vital parts of our shared human story. And by exploring them with me, you are helping to keep that story alive.
Thank you so much for watching.